Hey, Sean, this is one of two videos that I'm going to make right now as sort of a State of the Union. One of these I'm going to post today when you see it. Probably it'll go up on Monday morning. But the other one I'm going to post a year from now. And you can do this in YouTube Creator Studio. You can just schedule your publish date for whenever you want, up to 2 years out. But I think it's so important. I had a conversation. There was an interaction on Instagram. I put something out, sort of the three guiding principles I have right now as we're in the throes of this coronavirus, self-isolation, quarantine, whatever you want to call it, where there's three things that I'm trying to keep in mind every day, no matter what I do. The first one is, I'm going to save the first one because that's sort of what this is about. The third one is be nice to people. I've said this before in the past couple weeks. There's a lot going on. There's people, everyone is scared. Some people still have to go to work. Some people cannot work, although they may want to. There's a lot of fear and unhappiness and a lot of uncertainty out there. And the last thing any of us needs is to be cut off while we're driving. The one time we leave our house to go get food or something like that, if you get cut off, or if somebody gives you a mean look, or somebody, just any little microaggression or anything like that, anything other than a welcoming, warm smile that sort of says, hey, this sucks for all of us. Anything that's negative is just one extra thing that we shouldn't have to carry. And so my third thing is be nice to people, because that extra little thing can just be too much for some people. And the last thing we want to do right now is give anyone more than they already have to deal with. So put on a smile, see if you can't connect with somebody without making contact about all this stuff that we're sharing right now, because only through that connection and support are we going to make it through this as a community, as a society. So please take that to heart. 2, don't text and drive, please. We live like 2 blocks from a fire station, and every time I hear the sirens go off, this is a weird sentiment to have, but every time I hear the sirens go off, I think to myself, like, I hope that's a good one. I hope that's important. I hope that's somebody who's really hurting for a reason that needs it. Because if that was something stupid, if that was someone who was texting and driving and rear-ended somebody or ran a light or did anything just because they weren't paying attention, they were being selfish and sitting on their phone, you idiots, don't text and drive. Don't Instagram story and drive. Don't do anything while you're driving except drive. Always. But especially now, the last thing our first responders need is to go deal with some dumb accident because you weren't paying attention, because you had to check your Twitter and see who's talking about what with this virus, and you're texting. When you're driving, drive. Pull over if it's that important, because these extra, if you get hurt and you have to go to the hospital, you're now exposed, and these doctors have to deal with you in addition to this increased caseload. Whatever community you're in, the hospitals are struggling to keep up, and it's only going to get worse for a little while. So the last thing they want is some idiot who was texting and driving or being otherwise stupid to cause an accident. So please be careful. I love my one wheel. I have decided not to use my one wheel for several weeks, because I know that if I were to fall and, say, break my arm on a one wheel, I would feel like a real idiot explaining why I'm taking up a hospital bed, why I'm taking up a doctor and a nurse, why I'm exposing my family to the hospital environment right now while this pandemic is happening, why, for the sake of riding this fun toy. And so there's things like that. Choose your activities carefully. This isn't the time to perfect that new backflip on your BMX bike. This isn't the time to learn how to kickflip on a skateboard. This is the time to learn how to paint. This is the time to learn how to sew. Do things like that, because these extra accidents are just going to push the system over its limit right now. And if you can't wait a few weeks, just wait a few weeks. Wait a few weeks. Don't cause an extra police call, an extra ambulance call, an extra fire station call. Just be a little safe for a couple weeks. But the number one thing that I think we should all be doing is journaling honestly journaling and journaling honestly, because how you feel right now, not just how you feel watching some idiot in a crooked hat talk to you through a camera, talk at you through a camera, not just this, but with the fear, with the uncertainty, with not knowing what the end of your stay-at-home orders looks like, or when that is, if you have them already, or if they're yet to come, or if you're going to be in a community who is somehow blissfully this just goes by without affecting you. How you're feeling right now is really, really important, and it's important, one, to understand and embrace how you're feeling. You may be scared, you may not want to think about certain things. I encourage you to think about them. Sit with it for a little bit, come to terms with it. It's okay to be afraid. We're all afraid. I watched part of the New York briefing today with Andrew Cuomo, and he was saying, he pulled up an FDR quote about fear, but some things you have to prioritize over fear. And when you're looking at the first responders and the medical professionals and the teachers in these situations, they're all scared. No one's eager to go to work and do this, eager to put themselves in the line. They're all scared, but they understand that it's important, and it's more important than the fear. And so I say that to say it's okay to feel afraid, because we all are afraid, because we don't know. This is unprecedented. This is something we've never dealt with before. We don't know what it looks like. We don't know what this is going to look like in a week, in a month, when it's over, 2 months, 3 months, whenever. But it's important that we take the time to understand how we're feeling, to say, hey, I am afraid, and here's what I'm afraid of. And then to say, here's what I'm excited about. Here's what I'm looking forward to when this is over. Here's how I'm taking advantage of whatever circumstances, whatever hand I may have been dealt through this. Here's a chance to say, I'm lucky enough to have a home in which I can self-isolate, to have a family, to have the money to do food delivery, grocery delivery, and maybe have things delivered and not just cook the same rice and chicken every day, but be able to support local restaurants who are also hurting. And you have all these minimum wage employees who are just out of work. This is a good time to reflect on what's important to you and to maybe be grateful for some of the things that you took for granted earlier, because there's people who are going to be wrecked by this. There are people who already are wrecked by this. And there's people who are going to be totally fine and who just get a couple weeks off of work or months off of work, and they're going to recover from this like nothing happened. It's important to understand that spectrum and to come to terms with where you are on it and appreciate the other ends of it and the people around you, because it's important for all of us as we do this together, because basically the solution to all of this is rooted in being affluent, like being able to self-isolate and stuff. There's people who don't have a home, who are staying in shelters or group homes like that. There's people who can't get away from this thing. And if you're fortunate enough to be somewhere watching this YouTube video where it's not raining on your head and you're not around other people, take a moment to reflect on how lucky you are and how things may look dire all around you, and your money may be disappearing or your job may be hanging in the balance. Think about what you've got right now, because this is a good time to realize a lot of the things that you do have. And so after you reflect on all of this, I encourage you to write it down for two reasons. One, it's going to be really important for you to remember how you feel, because in 2 months, in 5 months, in 6 months, a year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, it's going to be really important that you look back on this and you remember how you felt right now, because there's lessons you're learning, and everyone's talking about how different they're going to be when this is over. But like so many things, I have a feeling we're going to go right back to business as usual a lot faster than we thought we would. And we're going to forget, hey, I was desperate. I was scared. I had no idea what I was doing. And so I encourage you to write this down and reflect on it so that you can look at it in a few years and appreciate the things that you learned and the perspective that you have right now, which is different than any other perspective you've ever had in your life. And recording that is going to have value for you in a few years when you look back and say, I remember what it was like. And you're not just recalling some of the photos or the video conversations, but the quiet moments in your head, because in there is growth, and it's important that we take that with us into the future. And that's the second thing too. The reflections that we have right now are things that we can pass on to future generations. And I think back to, like, we're mimicking the flu epidemic of 1918, the stock market crash of the 20s. We're talking about the wartime action of some of the, like, this is the biggest stimulus bill that's not in a war, whatever. There's a lot that's going on that's pivotal. And if we had access to, think about if you had access to the way your grandparents were thinking as they went through those things, your grandparents, your great grandparents, even your parents in some recent things, if you could hear that they were scared, they didn't know how they were going to do it, but they made it through. If you could go through a journal to see how they persevered, how they weathered these storms, and why, and some of what I'm sure they would say is, it was awful, and I had to do this, this, and this, and this to feed my kids. But now that those kids became parents who became your parents. And we have the ability to make a record of this that we can pass on easier than ever before. This isn't going to be a journal that can be wrecked in a flooded basement. You have an ability to preserve this stuff digitally and pass it along and back it up in multiple places. So if you're not journaling, try writing an email to yourself or putting something someplace online. Record a voice memo on your phone and just stream of consciousness talk. And in there is something that I think your future ancestors will look back and be grateful that you shared this insight as you were here. This is going to be something that people talk about forever, and hopefully we learn a lot of lessons from. And the lessons that you're learning are just as important as the lessons that other people are learning. So record it to pass it along, because I think it has a lot of value for the future. And so the second video that I'm going to make, I'm going to talk a little bit about how I'm feeling, but I'm going to have it post in a year, because I think it's going to be important then, and I'm definitely going to forget to post it or to go back and find it, or even for me to keep track of whatever hard drive I save that file on. I'm going to upload it to YouTube and tell YouTube to post it in a year. And I'm eager to look back in a year and say, where was I today? What was I thinking? This is like a week into St. Louis's stay-at-home order. And whether this thing's over in 3 more weeks, like they said, at the end of 30 days, or whether it goes on longer, I don't know. But I know how I feel right now, and it's going to be important for me to remember how I feel right now in a year. So I encourage you to do the same, whether you post it on YouTube in a public way right now, or you just record it. Get your phone out, talk like a selfie, and then hide it in your camera roll, but so it's there, so that one day you can look at it, you can pass it along, and when your kids ask you or your grandkids ask you, hey, what was it like? Like, do you remember that? You can say, yes, not only do I remember it, but here's what I looked like then, here's what the world was like then, and here's how I got through it and what I was thinking then. And I think there's a lot that we can learn from this, but if we don't keep that learning in the front of our minds, there's a good chance we can forget some of it as the generations go on. And I think, given all the struggle that so many people are feeling right now, to let all of the learning that we're experiencing right now disappear, that would by itself be another tragedy. Thanks for watching. Record something. If you're going to put it in somewhere in a public forum, share the link below, because I'd love to know how other people are feeling. Because if it's anything like me, it's a whole wide range of emotions, and it changes hour by hour, day by day. Thanks for watching. See you later. Bye.